Forget everything you know about modern racing games because today we're going back. Back to the wild days of the PlayStation 1, when racing wasn't just about speed, it was about chaos, attitude, and some seriously iconic games you probably forgot even existed. We're diving headfirst into the craziest, most underrated, and downright legendary racing and vehicle games that made the PS1 era unforgettable. From street races with cops on your tail, to blowing up enemies with weaponized school buses, it's a full-throttle trip through everything that made PlayStation 1 games so damn fun.
3, 2, 1, go!
Back on the PlayStation 1, if you loved fast cars, loud engines, and breaking the law at 200 miles per hour, there's one name you definitely remember: Need for Speed. And let me tell you, it wasn't just about crossing the finish line first. It was about style, adrenaline, and outrunning the cops with a V12 screaming under your fingers. Need for Speed 3: Hot Pursuit was a game-changer. Not only did it throw you into gorgeous tracks with supercars from brands like Ferrari, Lamborghini, and Aston Martin, but it cranked up the intensity with police chases that actually felt dangerous. One wrong move, and it was sirens, spike strips, and chaos. But here's something people forget. Hot Pursuit wasn't just fun because the cops chased you, it was the way they adapted. They weren't dumb. The more reckless you drove, the more aggressive they got. They'd call in roadblocks, throw spike strips, even box you in if you weren't careful. For a PS1 game, the AI was shockingly smart. Still, not everything was perfect. A lot of players back then complained about how rubber banding could ruin races. You'd build a huge lead, driving like a maniac, and then out of nowhere, bam! The AI would catch up like it had a rocket strapped to its bumper. But it wasn't just one mode. You had knockout tournaments, single races, championship brackets, and a surprisingly solid practice mode. And every detail mattered, down to the RPM meter and speedometer on the HUD, which for that time was mind-blowing. The roads were open, the visuals crisp for its era, and the gameplay? Pure arcade joy. No boring realism, just pedal to the metal fun. Then came Need for Speed High Stakes. Same raw energy, but this time with a career mode that made you feel like you were building something. Win races, unlock new rides, and the twist? You could play as the cops too. And yes, they added little things that made a big difference, like see-through windows where you could spot the driver turning the wheel during tight corners. But even with all the improvements, the difficulty was still kind of a roller coaster. One race would feel like a breeze, the next like you were suddenly racing against pros with cheat codes. You never really knew what you were walking into. And if you were more into precision driving than outrunning the law, Need for Speed Porsche Unleashed was your thing. The whole game was a love letter to Porsche's history. You'd start in the 50s with classic models and race through the decades, upgrading as you went. Every car felt different, and you could tell the devs really dialed in the physics for each era. Alright, so here's a game that probably flew under most people's radar, unless you were really into PlayStation 1 deep cuts. This one's called 007 Racing. Yeah, James Bond had a racing game. Not a shooter, not some stealth spy thing, just pure car action. And you know what? It was actually kinda awesome. You gotta drive some of the most iconic cars from the Bond movies, old-school Aston Martin, sleek BMWs, all loaded up with gadgets like missiles, machine guns, and smoke screens. It was basically Bond meets Twisted Metal. What a lot of people don't know is that each mission in the game was actually inspired by specific scenes from the Bond films. You'd find yourself chasing down a villain through narrow European streets one minute, then escaping a high-security base the next, just like in the movies. And the best part? Your car's gadgets were tailored to each mission. Sometimes you'd need oil slicks to shake off enemies. Other times you'd fire rockets to blow open blocked paths. It made every level feel like a mini action movie, and that Bond flavor was baked into every second of it. The missions weren't just about speed either. You had to complete objectives while dodging enemy fire, weaving through tight roads, and using every tool your car had. No joke, if you stopped moving for too long, you'd get destroyed in seconds. It kept you on edge the whole time. The pacing, however, was kinda off. Some missions were over before they even got interesting. while others dragged on forever with vague objectives and confusing layouts. And yeah, the AI was all over the place. Sometimes enemy cars would drive like total clowns, crashing into walls or getting stuck in corners. Then out of nowhere, they'd turn into absolute snipers, landing perfect shots and chasing you with Terminator-level aggression. And look, this was peak EA, back when they still knew how to make weird, fun games. The physics were surprisingly decent, the driving felt good, and even though the graphics were super rough, classic PlayStation 1, jaggy edges and all, the game made up for it with intense gameplay and a cool vibe. If you had a PlayStation 1 and you didn't play Driver, did you even have a PlayStation? This game wasn't just a cop chase simulator, it was the blueprint for a whole generation of action racing games. You played as this undercover cop, John Tanner, who drove like an absolute maniac, but in a good way. Your mission? Infiltrate the criminal underworld by becoming their getaway driver. And yeah, the game made you prove you were good enough right at the start. That first mission? Brutal. You're stuck in a parking garage doing stunts like slaloms and 180 just to pass a test. A lot of kids quit the game right there, and honestly, can you blame them? The game never explained what you were supposed to do in that garage. No prompts, no tips, just a list of moves and a timer ticking down. It felt more like a developer prank than a tutorial. Brutal way to start a game. But if you made it past that, man, you were in for something special. The whole vibe of the game was straight up inspired by old-school Hollywood car chases from the 70s and 80s. Like they didn't even hide it. The intro was practically ripped from the movie The Driver from 1978. Same scene. Elevator, stolen car, getaway, boom. What made Driver different, though, were the tiny details. Stuff like turn signals that actually blinked when you turned, hubcaps that popped off when you drifted too hard, even street layouts that encouraged you to pull off insane jumps, especially in places like San Francisco. And if you remember launching off those hills just for fun, you're a real one. You know what else blew my mind? The damage system. It wasn't just visual. It actually affected how your car handled. Smash into too many walls and suddenly your steering goes wonky or the engine starts choking. It forced you to drive smarter, not just faster. And the way the cops reacted was wild too. Then came Driver 2. Bigger cities, better graphics, and for the first time you could get out of the car. That was mind-blowing back then. You could straight up jack another car off the street and keep going. And yeah, it was buggy as hell. I remember jumping out midair and watching my car phase through the road like it was haunted or something. Especially in Chicago with those crazy drawbridges. But let's be real, Driver 2 pushed the PlayStation way past its limits. The frame rate dropped like crazy, especially when there were too many cars on screen. Sometimes the game would just freeze mid-chase or take forever to load the city. It was ambitious, but man, it struggled to keep up. Oh, and don't even get me started on Havana, that tiny little secret car. I used to call it the Mr. Bean car, looked just like it. I think it was supposed to be a Mini Cooper or something, but man, that thing was hilarious. I spent years with this game, knew every corner, every glitch, every hidden car, and no joke, Driver might be the most fun I ever had on the PlayStation 1. Real quick, if you're enjoying the ride so far, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps way more than you think. And hey, if you want to take it to the next level and support the channel even more, consider becoming a member. You'll get some exclusive perks and help keep the engine running around here. Thanks a ton for being here and watching. Seriously, I appreciate you. Alright, back to the madness.
Okay, rookie, step on it.
Man, if you ever wanted to feel like a real cop in the middle of a high-speed chase, this game was it. World's scariest police chases threw you straight into the chaos, sirens blaring, tires screeching, and no backup in sight. You weren't some undercover agent like in Driver. Nah, you were the law with lights on and gun out, ready to stop whoever dared to run. This game hit the PlayStation 1 back in 2001 based on that Fox TV show where they showed actual police chases from the streets of America. And the devs didn't hold back. You had a full-on cruiser, a radio feeding you intel, and criminals doing everything they could to shake you off. And you could actually shoot while driving. Yeah, not just ramming cars, you pulled up next to suspects and let that thing rip. That kind of chaos was rare on the PS1, especially in a game this obscure. And let's be real, this one flew under the radar for most people. But here's something most people don't know. The game actually had dynamic voice lines during chases. The dispatcher on the radio would react in real time depending on how reckless things got. You'd hear stuff like "suspect heading westbound at high speed" or "officer, use caution," and it made the whole thing feel way more immersive. Still, the AI was all over the place. One minute, the suspects drove like total idiots, smashing into poles and spinning out for no reason. The next, they'd pull off perfect getaways and lose you with some unreal driving moves. There wasn't a huge story or campaign. It had that simple training setup, some missions, and then the real fun, free roam. That's where it came alive. Cruising around in a blazer, chasing bad guys, listening to the scanner, it felt raw and gritty. Like you were part of something way bigger than just a game. It wasn't perfect, no getting out of the car, limited environments. The visuals were rough even for the time, with pop-in textures, weird lighting, and frame drops when too much was going on. But for what it was, it delivered. Back in the day, before F1 became all about hybrid engines and data analysis, there was a raw magic to the sport. And yeah, that feeling somehow got captured on the PlayStation 1. F1 2000 wasn't just another racing game, it was a full-on time capsule from what many fans call the golden era of Formula 1. You had legends like Fisichella driving for Benetton, Eddie Irvine pushing the Jaguar to its limits, and Jos Verstappen, yeah, Max's dad, doing his best in an Arrows car that never quite delivered. And let's be real, the man's most memorable moment was almost catching fire during a pit stop. Wild times. In the game, you could race on classic circuits like Interlagos, Spa-Francorchamps, and the old Hockenheimring, long before it got chopped down to a shadow of its former self. My go-to car? The McLaren of Mika Hakkinen. Not because it was the fastest, though it was quick, but because it just looked badass. F1 2000 had this charm. And you know what made this game even more legit? The dynamic weather. Yeah, that's right. You could start a race under clear skies, and by lap 5, you'd be sliding around in the rain like you were driving on ice. It wasn't just visual either. Your car would actually handle worse in the wet. You had to adapt on the fly, brake earlier, take corners slower. For a PlayStation 1 game, that was next level. And don't even get me started on the commentary. It was cheesy, it repeated a lot, but man, it added something. But even with all that cool stuff, the AI could be straight up dumb sometimes. Like, they'd brake way too early on straights or just forget how to turn. And if you crashed near them, total chaos. Half the grid would pile up behind you like dominoes, and the race turned into a demolition derby real quick. It definitely gave you some what just happened funny moments, but also super frustrating. The graphics? Basic by today's standards, sure. But it loaded most of the track ahead of you so you could feel the speed without running blind at 180 miles per hour. The trade-off? Brutal frame drops mid-corner. You'd line up the perfect corner and suddenly, the game stutters. And boom, straight into the wall. Still, we didn't care. It was immersive, it was fun, and honestly, it was one of the best ways to live the dream of being an F1 driver without leaving your couch. If you grew up smashing cars instead of racing them, then you know what we're about to get into. We're talking full-blown vehicular chaos, missiles, mines, and mayhem on wheels. One of the craziest games to ever hit the PlayStation 1 was Vigilante 8-Second Offense. This wasn't your typical racer. You weren't trying to cross a finish line, you were trying to survive. You picked a ride, dropped into a war zone, and the mission was simple: blow up everyone else before they blow you up. And the lineup of vehicles? Absolutely wild. School buses, garbage trucks, muscle cars, Each one had its own style and special weapons. And what made it even crazier? You could actually switch up your special attacks mid-match by inputting secret combos, kind of like fighting games. It wasn't just button-mashing chaos. You had to know your ride's moves and time your shots right. Some cars had homing missiles, others had ground-shaking shockwaves. If you mastered your character's full loadout, you could wipe out enemies before they even knew what hit them. My go-to was always the big, heavy vehicles. Felt like a tank on wheels. The physics were tight too. You could feel the weight of every car. The suspension bounced just right. And when you picked up a power-up, it snapped into your car like it was made for it. And man, the maps? Unforgettable. The Arizona map had this massive crater where you could launch off ramps and, get this, if you destroyed the meteor, a giant ant would crawl out. First time that happened, I damn near dropped the controller. But let's be honest, the graphics haven't aged well. Even back then, some explosions looked like pixel soup, and the frame rate could tank hard when things got hectic. Add in a few bugs like getting stuck on terrain or watching your car randomly flip out after a jump. Got messy. If you grew up loving Crash and had a thing for fast-paced chaos, then you already know this game was a masterpiece. We're talking about pure kart racing madness with Crash Team Racing on the PlayStation 1. This wasn't just a throwaway spin-off. It had story, challenge, and a ton of heart. Your mission? Race against this wild alien dude named Nitrous Oxide who's literally threatening to wipe out the whole planet. Sounds ridiculous, but man, it worked. And the game throws you into it with 15 classic characters from the Crash universe, each with their own vibe. Only 8 are available at first, but beat the bosses and boom, you unlock more. But not everything was sunshine and Wumpa fruit. Some players felt that the difficulty curve was a bit harsh, especially in the later boss races. You'd be cruising through the early game and then suddenly get smacked by a rubber-banding AI that never let you breathe. Crash Team Racing had one of the coolest adventure modes for a kart racer. You didn't just race in random cups. You were exploring this connected world map, unlocking new areas, finding secret routes, and even facing time trials from that creepy floating mask guy. It made the whole thing feel like an actual journey, not just a bunch of races. Now let's talk gameplay. You've got power-ups, traps, speed boosts, and just enough chaos to make every race unpredictable. It's the kind of game where skill matters, but so does knowing when to throw a bomb at your best friend right before the finish line. Everything was 3D, colorful, and full of personality. The tracks were creative, the mechanics felt tight, and let's be real, this was PlayStation's answer to Mario Kart, and it delivered hard. If there was one racing game on the PlayStation 1 that felt more like a street fight than an actual race, it was Road Rash Jailbreak. This game wasn't just wild, it was absolutely unhinged in the best way possible. You weren't just racing bikes, man, you were throwing punches, kicking people off their seats, dodging cops, and blasting through city streets like you were part of a biker gang straight out of a late-night action movie. And the vibe? Total chaos. From the gritty soundtrack to those weirdly creepy cutscenes full of mugshot-style character portraits, it was like the game didn't care about looking pretty, it just wanted to be loud, rough, and unforgettable. But yeah, not everything was smooth, the game felt kinda rushed in some spots. Like, the tracks looked cool at first, but after a while, you noticed how copy-pasted some of them were. Same turns, same background, just remixed. It didn't kill the fun, but it did make things feel a bit repetitive if you were grinding through it. And if you played the campaign mode, you'll remember how hilariously weird the storyline got. Each character had their own little plot, full of low-budget FMV cutscenes that felt like they were filmed in someone's basement. One guy just wanted to bail his cousin out of jail. Another was trying to impress a girl. It was totally ridiculous, but somehow, it added charm. Now here's the crazy part. This was the last main game in the series, and also the first to go full 3D. The jump from 2D to 3D might have looked a little janky, sure, but it gave the game so much more room to be, well, Road Rash. You had freedom, speed, and total madness. Every race felt like a bar fight on wheels. The controls were arcade style, super simple, super responsive. No realism here, just pure arcade fun. You could smack the guy next to you with a chain, then jump a cop car at full speed while a punk rock track blasted in the background. It was dumb, it was awesome, and it was pure adrenaline. Alright, let's talk about a racing game that didn't just aim for fun, it aimed for perfection. Back on the PlayStation 1, when most driving games were wild arcade-style chaos, Gran Turismo came in with a serious face and said, "Nah, let's do this right." This wasn't just a game, it was an entire driving school wrapped in a disc. You didn't just pick a car and race, you had to earn your place. First thing, pass license tests. Yeah, before you could even dream of joining the big races, the game made sure you knew how to brake, corner, and handle your car like a pro. And once you did, boom, welcome to a world of over 170 cars, each one driving completely different from the other. But let's be honest, some of them felt like puzzles with zero room for error. You could spend an hour trying to nail the perfect corner just to pass a basic requirement. A lot of players gave up before even touching the real races. From compact hatchbacks to high-end sports monsters, Gran Turismo wasn't just throwing cars at you, it was letting you feel the difference. Tuning? Check. Upgrades? Check. Every little change you made in the garage had a real impact on the track. And here's something a lot of people forget. Gran Turismo had a used car dealership. Yeah, before buying your dream ride brand new, you could scroll through random secondhand listings that changed every in-game day. Some of the best deals were hiding there if you had the patience to look. It felt like real-life car hunting, digging through old but powerful rides, hoping to score something special without blowing all your credits. And speaking of tracks, there were 11 of them, and each one had its own flavor. Not just in layout, but in how your car reacted. Now, the tracks were great, but the AI? Sometimes your opponents drove like they were half asleep, other times they'd pull off perfect racing lines and block every move like they were in the final lap of a championship. The visuals might look dated now, sure, but back then, that clean interface, those detailed car models, and the smooth replays were next level. Honestly, Gran Turismo didn't just raise the bar, it set it. And for a lot of us, that's where our obsession with racing sims really started. So now I gotta ask, out of all these PS1 racing gems, which one was your favorite? Or maybe there's one I missed that deserves a shout-out. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your picks. If you had fun on this nostalgia trip, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Thanks a ton for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.